Hi, everyone. This is Sally McKenzie, and I'm the CEO of McKenzie Management. And we're a nationwide dental practice management company that helps dental practices to reach their true potential. Thank you for taking time in your schedule to be with me today. And a special thanks to Viva Learning for getting this webinar to you live. I want you to be sure and visit their website at vivalearning.com, and there you're going to find over 600 on-demand courses for dentists, hygienists, assistants, and dental business staff. And I also invite you to where you registered for this webinar on my site, practicemanagementlearning.com, and there you'll find all of my archived on-demand courses, which I think I have way over 30 on there now, so on all different kinds of subjects. And I'm in the process of putting together my schedule for 2018. We still have one more left yet this year in 2017, December. And then I'll be posting my schedule for 2018. So tonight I'm going to talk about how to improve your team's performance. And building a successful dental practice certainly goes way beyond just perfecting your clinical skills. It's about relationships, and whether those relationships are with your patients or your team members. And unfortunately, if your team is struggling, those important relationships are likely strained. And that keeps everyone then from meeting their true or their full potential. So practices who have weak teams also deal with significant practice inefficiencies, mismanagement, endless frustrations, and there's usually a low team morale. And of course, all these problems eat into your productivity and your bottom line. So taking steps to make your team stronger can certainly help turn this around. We know that motivated team members are happy to come to work every day and doing their part to move the practice forward. We'll usually see that revenues begin to rise and patients will surely start to notice the difference, making them more likely to stay loyal to your practice and even to refer. You know how important it is to surround yourself with strong team members. They're certainly vital to your success, which is why I am sure that you hired a group of talented, dedicated people who are more than capable of making valuable contributions to your practice. The problem is, in many practices, this just isn't happening. Some employees just aren't meeting your expectations, and instead of helping your practice flourish, they're holding your practice back. So what can you do to strengthen your team? I've put together a few tips to help you get started. The first, obviously, is for leading your team, you have to create detailed job descriptions. And that isn't telling an employee, can you just write down what you do and we'll have that as your job description. It just doesn't work that way. They also need to have regular feedback, and you as the leader need to conduct performance reviews. I just never cease to be amazed at the number of practice owners who have no comprehension of what it means to be a leader. They know they are the boss, which they believe means that when the employees mess up, they tell them. Or when things go wrong, they scream and yell and they make a scene that no one forgets. Or they just shun the whole idea of being a boss, hiding in their operatories or in their offices, on the internet, just to let employees, take care of things. Like it'll work itself out. It's a scenario that's not uncommon in many small businesses, and the business of dentistry is certainly no exception. After all, dentists are not trained to be leaders. And if they tend to be fearful and mistrusting or insecure individuals in their personal life, effective leadership will be all the more difficult to achieve. Just because you own a business doesn't mean that you're automatically a leader. I mean, you're put in that role, but it doesn't mean that you automatically know what it takes to be one. Few practice owners truly comprehend how to really maximize the value of the people who are central to their success. Many will happily assert that they pay their employees a fair salary, they provide a few perks, and they deliver good dentistry. So what more leadership does the office really need? Sadly, these practices likely will peak at merely average. But for the many doctors seeking to improve their leadership skills and their practices, I encourage you to consider now what I regard as a few key characteristics of both effective leaderships and effective teams. The first one is to establish clear expectations of your employees, both individually and as a team. When a dentist goes to a front office person and says, I need for you to keep my schedule full, that expectation, that perception could be that I need to have something occupied then in every 10-minute, line on the schedule. But telling an employee that they need to keep the schedule full, they could produce, $1,500 with a full schedule. And another day they could produce $10,000 with a full schedule. So when I say to make your expectations clear, that's what I mean for you to do. You've got to have the expectations set so they're can be measured as well. An effective leader also provides training and the necessary resources to achieve those expectations. What we want to do is we want to tell the employee, okay, you need to schedule me every day for $5,000 worth of production and walk away and hope that it's done. But many of these employees are absolutely have had no professional training, and while you think that they know, they really don't know. Establish clear guidelines for office procedures and office conduct as well. If you have employees that you want them to be, a certain way, then you really need to make it very clear to them. You also need to make sure that you provide feedback to the employees, and you definitely need to compliment them. And I know, and we've discussed this before, that many of you just don't have it's not in your temperament type to do that. You probably don't provide feedback to your children, and you don't provide feedback to your spouse or to your friends. But when you are owning a dental practice and you now have the employees that are looking to you for guidance, you have to give them feedback. They have to know that what they're doing is a good job. And of course, everybody likes to be praised in public, I think, and for other people to hear, oh, he or she really thinks that I did a great job. And of course, if the employee needs to have correction, to do that privately and to make sure that you're very constructive about it. Effective leaders also are secure enough to know that they don't have all the answers, and they appreciate input and opinions from the teams to encourage open communication and a steady flow of ideas. There's nothing worse than somebody who thinks that they do have all the answers, and sometimes they make up the answers just because it makes them sound good that they had an answer, but they don't really have the answer. Effective leaders also trust their teams. They are not swooping in to take over, and there is no micromanagement. Micromanagement is a horrible, dysfunctional characteristic of a leader or a business owner. doing any kind of micromanagement sends the message to the employee that you don't trust me in what I'm doing. And it's just it's very deflating to anybody when whatever the person's doing, you're micromanaging. You know, like, well, I know I could do it better myself, or if I just do it myself. And you really need to figure out why you do that and get rid of that. Treat your employees with respect and also with encouragement. And if you don't respect the employees, then they shouldn't be working for you. You have to trust them, you have to have a trust level, and you have to have respect. And they really need to be encouraged to know that they are doing they're doing a good job. But you know, it doesn't stop with the doctor and the practice owner, because central to the success of the practice is effectively leading team. And successful teams also have a few characteristics as well. Each employee understands how his or her day-to-day work fits into the practice's overall goals and objectives. So they've had enough training and they've had enough knowledge and understanding about what they are supposed to be doing day to day and how that affects the other employees, the patients, and the overall objective of your dental business. Also, clear and open communication among the team, and the doctor is the norm, not the exception. So the hardest temperament type for dentists to keep that up is going to be a dentist who is introverted. But you must force yourself to be extroverted during the time that you're there in the practice, because dentistry is all about communication. Positive feedback and constructive problem solving among the group. So definitely team meetings, and again, positive feedback, but if there's some type of feedback where they're not doing, they need to know how to fix that as well. I've always tried to put the onus back on me if I have an employee that is not doing what I want them to do, that I feel that, you know, I've explained. So I always like to, you know, preface that by, can you help me to understand why you said that, did that, haven't done that? You just want to understand. Help me to understand, because you know, maybe I haven't spent enough time with you in teaching you and training you what needs to be done. So I always want to make sure that I've done my part. Trust and mutual respect are evident, so the employees trust and respect the leader, and as I mentioned, but they also trust and respect each other. And sometimes it's just not the case. That's where the whole conflict comes in, gossip, you know, comes in, differences in personality types, and they don't understand each other. So problems and concerns are addressed, but they're ignored. So in other words, we might talk about something at the team meeting that we want to address, and we'll talk about it, but then nothing ever, you know, happens with it. Perhaps the dentist as a leader is non-confrontational. That's another. We have dentists out there like that. They'll walk on hot coals before they would confront an employee or a situation about something. Strengths are appreciated and they're maximized, and the weaknesses are recognized and they're minimized. So the team understands the strength of themselves and the others in the team, and they also recognize the weaknesses. Whenever a person, whether it's an employer or whether it's an employee, they're not doing what you think that they should be doing, I always try to encourage you to take yourself up to a higher level, up in the clouds, and look down on that person and try to understand, instead of being reactionary to what it is they said or they didn't do, or they didn't help with the instrument, or they came in late, or whatever it is, to try to figure out why. Is there some other reason that I'm really not seeing of why? Maybe that employee is full of fear because they really don't know how to do the job. We just have to try to be the bigger person sometimes, I think, and really look at it, look at it from a different angle. The next thing is that you've got to make the right hiring decision for the employees. And every interview on earth I've had that feeling of, oh my gosh, I found the perfect candidate. And sometimes you start talking with a candidate and you think, this person is perfect for the job. My search is over. How could I be so lucky? However, I want you to please resist the temptation to cut your interview process short. Stay the course and interview at least 3 candidates if you're fortunate to have 3. I know some of you are in places where you can't even find one. But if you're fortunate to be able to have multiples, try to interview at least 3 candidates. It's really amazing how your perspective will shift as you work through the rest of the interview process. It's just simply never a good idea to make a yes or a no decision about candidates in that moment, because a hiring decision is not a 2 + 2 equation. It's a very complex process, and it requires time and reflection. It's also true, based on my experience, that when hiring a new employee, and especially when you're desperate to get somebody in the job, that we have a tendency to be biased toward the first few candidates that we meet, because we're just wanting to get this over with. I mean, I honestly don't know anybody who can say that they love going through the interviewing candidates. But I encourage you that you owe it to yourself to tell yourself that you're going to interview 3 to 5 candidates, and then mentally making a hiring decision, and then sleep on it. I don't know what it is about the sleep, but it just, going to the next day, it just kind of puts a new perspective on things. I guarantee you that once you have a hiring protocol process in place, that you will not live in fear of having a mediocre employee working for you or an employee quitting tomorrow. It has been my observation in the over 30 years that I've done this work that dentists do put up with mediocre employees because they have a fear of how to recruit, how to interview, how to hire, and how to train those employees. So they put up with less than. So this is why it's very important just to simply have the protocol in place. Knowing how to hire smart is absolutely a must. For example, you can't even begin to write an ad unless you have a job description listing the duties, the responsibilities, and the job qualifications for the job. And then where are you going to put it? Where will you recruit? Are you going to do it on social media? Will you do it on network sites? And please keep a file in your computer on your ads and what they said, so you can reference back to them and not have to recreate the wheel the next time. I've learned that myself, learned that the hard way. I have an employee file for each year. Not my employees' files, but a file on employees that were hired or in my company during that time. So if in the year 2016 I was looking for a specific job description, job employee for my business, then I have the ad. If I need to put that ad back in again, I've already got it. I can reference, go back in history to see what I did. Of course, then I know at that point what ads worked and which ones didn't. I would also put in place personality testing, skill testing, like instrument identification for a dental assistant, a math test for a business employee. The hiring process must be more than just talking across a desk during an interview. So establish a system of how to recruit, test, and your interview questions. And then the next time that somebody is mediocre or somebody doesn't show up after lunch, it just doesn't become that scary anymore. Also, we don't want to ignore staff conflict. So improving team performance means dealing with conflict head on. And you know that there's no avoiding it. Conflict is going to happen in your practice. It's part of daily life, and your practice certainly isn't immune to that. But still, I know the thought of it makes you cringe. So you choose not to think about it at all. Instead, you just go about your routine and turn away when you see even a hint of conflict within your team. Like they'll work it out. You just want to do your dentistry. I know. If that's your attitude toward conflict, then we need to have a discussion, because ignoring conflict within your team will only make the situation worse. It costs you time and money and maybe even employees. It kills team morale and makes your practice an uncomfortable place for patients to visit. That's not exactly a recipe for success, is it? And even if it makes you uncomfortable, you have to deal with conflict before it does permanent damage to your practice. Conflict, we know, often quietly festers, and it may start with frustration with the employee who consistently fails to provide necessary production reports, maintaining that she's just too busy with other responsibilities to get to it. Of course, the doctor walks away seething, but doesn't hold the staff member accountable because she doesn't know how to challenge the claim. Or the doctor, busy with patients, doesn't feel she can assess how busy the employee really is. Or perhaps the schedule is regularly booked incorrectly. The doctor mentions the problem in passing during a staff meeting, but doesn't take the time to explain directly to the person responsible for scheduling why scheduling is so critical to the practice, or provide training to ensure that the problem is resolved. The dentist and the clinical team just quietly fume, and they're stressed out because the practice is consistently falling short of productivity goals, and they constantly have to deal with the wrong appointments on the wrong days. Or in another case, the doctor had given clear direction to the scheduling coordinator, but the employee is too timid to direct patients to specific times for fear that they will react negatively. So, as a result, the patients then are in charge of the schedule, not the doctor, not the team, and certainly not the scheduling coordinator. That can be a fact, but it still doesn't make it, it doesn't make for the best team and practice that you can have. So how do we conquer this conflict? Number one, you have to take the emotion out of it. So instead of reacting to conflict with emotion, you react to it strategically. Privately discuss the situation with the employees involved and work together to come up with a solution. And focus on using a once negative situation to create a positive change in your practice. Remember, it's not about determining who's right or wrong. It's about finding a solution. Number two, choose to be positive. You determine how to react to situations. So when conflict brings negativity to your practice, stay positive and focused on finding a solution. Encourage your team members to also do the same. Number three, don't talk about team members when they're not there. Doctor, the worst thing that you can do is to show favoritism and to take only one team member into your office at one time. So if Susan is upset with Mary because she can't seem to make it to work on time, Susan will likely let this quietly fester until it manifests into passive-aggressive behavior. And that means gossip and snide remarks. To help put an end to gossip before it starts, tell the team members to only talk about coworkers when they're in the room. Encourage them to walk away from other employees who don't follow this rule or to change the subject. Number four, hold daily huddles. If you're dealing with conflict in your practice, chances are you also have a communication issue. Excuse me, morning huddles or the morning meetings before your day start, they provide a great opportunity for you and your team members to communicate and address any issues that could, lead to bigger problems. Number five, hold your team accountable. So meet with your team members once a month to get an update on the systems that they're accountable for. I just sent out a questionnaire this week via email, and one of them was, it was about the schedule, and it was about how many, does more than one person schedule appointments in your practice? And everybody that replied yes also said that they had unfilled holes in the schedule. They were not meeting their practice objectives. And this goes to what I'm talking about with this number five here, is because when you have two or more people scheduling appointments, there is no accountability of the scheduling system. So discuss what's happening in every system and how performance can be improved. Is there too much unscheduled time last month? Work as a team to come up with strategies to turn it around and clearly communicate, again, your expectations, set deadlines, and delegate individual employees to pursue the problem of solving the strategies that you outline in your meeting. This not only helps improve your system, it helps avoid frustrations and conflict down the road. Number six, develop and share job descriptions. Not providing your employees with clear direction is a great way to create conflict within your team. Because without the job descriptions, no one knows who's responsible for which tasks or which systems, and that leads to frustration and power struggles. So when you have detailed job descriptions that provide clear direction and outline each job's role and the necessary skill set and what your expectations are, that is what we're talking about communication. There's no question about who's responsible for what. So clear job descriptions have to be created for every job, every role, and they need to be shared with the other team members. So this is what happens a lot when there's conflict between the front and back, so to speak, because the two just don't understand what the job responsibilities are. Number 7, establish clear office policies. So develop policies that outline standards for professional behavior and how you want your office to run. If you're not going to tolerate gossip in the practice, then make it a part of your office policies. And include these policies in the employee handbook and make sure every employee reads and signs off that they have read and they understand it. And number 8, stop making excuses. I know confronting conflict isn't easy, but making excuses to avoid it isn't going to make the problem go away. It doesn't matter how nice Mary is or how long she's been part of your team. If there's a problem, you need to sit down with her and find a solution together. You just can't pretend the conflict will fade away with time. The opposite is true. And if you choose to ignore it, it usually only gets worse. Also, we talked about training, because giving an employee proper training, or I like to say professional training, will help your team members become more efficient. It makes them confident in their skills and happier when they come to work each day. We know that untrained employees equal unhappy employees. And so employees who feel inadequate, underachieving, or unsupported are unhappy. Those type of people are usually filled with fear. They aren't satisfied in their work, which will cause them to underperform, make mistakes, and not care about their work. That costs the practice in lost time and money. Untrained employees are inefficient. More time and effort is usually spent when employees aren't fully or properly trained to perform their tasks, and it takes them longer to do the work. It doesn't matter how long a new team member has worked in the dental industry. Without proper training, that team member will be lost. And many dentists don't like to waste time on training. That's their thought process. They don't know how to do it. Some of the dentists don't even know how to train some of the job descriptions in there. And I'm not saying that's a horrible thing. I'm just saying you've got to get somebody who can train these people. But believe me, it is not a waste of time. It is not a waste of money. Training will save you a lot of time and frustration down the road. It's going to make it well worth the effort. And don't forget to provide training when you incorporate a new technology into your practice. Team members are going to be a lot more confident in their roles and more productive. But dentists bring in this new technology, and they've gone and to a meeting and have read about it, had hands-on training, and then they come back, and it just is not that way with the employees, and the employee is just generally lost. So we know that professional training builds confidence towards peak performance, and this is what we're looking for, is to how can we get the top performance out of the employees. As business owners, one of our most important roles is to bring out the best in our teams. Our job is to help employees improve their confidence and make them see that their contributions and their talents really matter. To do that, we have to help them improve their current skills, and we have to help them learn new skills. And yes, professional training means carving out some time, and this means spending some money to have it done. You're showing the employee that you believe in their abilities, will boost their confidence, and it also, it usually builds them up emotionally. The next thing I want to talk about is giving out raises when we're talking about the team here. I don't want you to just give out raises just because. Giving out raises can be a tricky business, and you know your team members want and they expect pay bumps from time to time. But you simply can't increase salaries if the practice revenues are down. And when you tell employees that you can't afford to give out raises right now, they become frustrated and they even start to resent you because they're convinced you're shoveling cash into the trunk of that Mercedes every night when you go home. They're convinced you're keeping all the money for yourself and that you don't appreciate everything that they do for the practice. Well, there's no question figuring out how to balance the financial needs of the practice with the financial desires of the staff is not easy, but it is necessary. And why? Because some dentists give in to employee requests for raises even though they don't have the money for it. They think an extra few dollars an hour couldn't hurt, but unfortunately, many times they're wrong. Employees also have to understand how their role fits into the overall success of the practice. And that starts with detailed job descriptions again and guidance from you, the practice CEO. It also includes regularly scheduled performance reviews and a commitment to giving team members feedback throughout the year, whether you see them excelling in their role or you see them doing, something wrong. So employees have to earn raises. I always say that raises are given based on the performance of the employee and the performance of the practice. So those two things have to be there. It can't be, just because it's been another year. It just doesn't work that way. We need to give the employees a reason to excel, so they need to know the rules of the game for what you are reviewing in their performance to determine whether or not that they could even begin to get a raise. So in other words, how are you measuring their performance? So setting practice goals, and they also need to have individual goals as well. So what if you could take the often dreaded performance review and turn it into a power tool for inspiring the team? What if you could transform this often viewed exercise in futility and into the ultimate motivational instrument that would spur you, both of you, productively and an individual commitment to the practice, and just give your office the professional edge that you've long desired, but you never thought that you could achieve it. And you say all that from a performance review, and I say yes, you can, and all that and more. I make the assertion because in working with practices for over 30 years, McKinsey Management has found that the most successful practices and the most effective employees thrive in those environments in which team members' individual performance objectives work hand in glove with the doctor's practice philosophy and goals. And we've confirmed that auxiliaries excel in those situations in which the employees have job descriptions stating their different responsibility, and we've documented that time and again both in the business employees in dentistry and clinical, that they flourish when there's an overriding expectation that team members are accountable for specific responsibilities. So again, each employee's job description has to have a goal. For every task they do or system that they're responsible for, there has to be an objective or a goal that they're expected to achieve by way of their performance. So just to give you kind of an idea of what I'm talking about, let's look at a scheduling coordinator. And scheduling coordinators are fairly easy to measure based on what they do. They definitely should have a daily producer objective, whether that, obviously that's a dentist. There may be more than one dentist in the practice. And if the scheduling coordinator is in charge of the hygiene schedule, then each hygienist would have a production objective as well. And so she has to schedule to the goal. Most of these scheduling coordinators simply fill in lines and hope that it met the goal instead of scheduling to the goal. It's a different mindset. Therefore, if there's open time in the schedule, that open time needs to be calculated every day. What was the total at the week? What is the total at the end of the month? There really, should not be any more than 20 minutes a day open in doctor time. And some practices would flip out if they even had that. So you can certainly set whatever objective or goal that you want, but this young lady in this picture knows that she's responsible for that. And she knows that she has to report. I would have her report that at the beginning of the day meeting the next day. I would have her report how much production she's got scheduled for today, and I would have her report how much she's got scheduled for the next day, and how much the practice ended up, or the doctor, the individual producer ended up producing the day before. Of course, we'll assume that she's taking new patient phone calls. We want to know how many new patient inquiries that we got in by day, by week, by month, and we want to know whether or not what percentage of those people actually came in and showed up for their appointments. She does not have 100% control over that. She does not have 100% control over how many new patients contact the practice, but she is the first point of contact. And if the practice found that they were not getting a very high percentage of conversion from phone call or email scheduling to actually showing up, then it's certainly worthy to figure out what it is that she's saying, or it could be what she's simply repeating the philosophy of the dentist on how new patients are to be handled, and the new patients aren't buying into how the dentist wants to treat new patients. So it can be different reasons, but it's trying to find any weaknesses within the system. So we want to have a high percentage of new patients that are actually going to show up. But so this is just to give you an example. This is not all inclusive of a scheduling coordinator, for crying out loud. The financial coordinator is also an easy job description to measure because they're dealing with money. So this person oversees the accounts receivable for the practice, which should not be any more than 1 month of net production. And she's also responsible for, let's say she's responsible for billing and collecting the money from the patients. So the monthly collection ratio should be 98% or more. If the over 90 days is more than 10%, then the collection ratio needs to be over 100%, as she collects 98 cents out of the dollar produced today and goes back and dials for dollars to get past due money in. And then she absolutely should be measured on how much over-the-counter collection that she did on a daily basis from what was produced during the day. That 45% or more may sound low. That would be if you are accepting assignment of benefits from insurance companies. If you are not, then you're basically a cash practice, so you better have 95 to 100%. You know, the patients get work done, they have to pay for it. But this is a very easy job description. And again, that's just some. That's not all of them, but I'm just trying to give you an idea. Patient coordinator's job description. The patient coordinator is a job title that we like to give to an employee who is responsible and accountable for the hygiene department, for scheduling of the hygiene department, for the recall system, reactivating past due patients. So this particular job description would definitely have the patient retention percentage for the month. So what percentage of the patients that were due to come in for periodic exam that month, what percentage of those people actually that were due came in? The patient retention per month, let's say 92, 95%. It's a little difficult to get a little bit any higher than 95% unless there's, and you will get over 100% if you are frantically, dialing for dollars and making contact on past due patients. The open hygiene time definitely should not be any more than 30 minutes per day open time, and if there is, that is going to be a real issue, especially if hygienists are being paid a guaranteed salary, whether they have a patient or they don't. So there is a guaranteed X amount of dollars being paid out for hygiene payroll, but there is less than the daily hygiene production goal that's being achieved. So we would also want this person to report, just as the scheduling coordinator did for the doctor, how much hygiene production per hygienist was done yesterday, how much was done, how much is scheduled for today, and how much is scheduled for tomorrow. And then, of course, we would want to generate a past due recall report. We would want to find out how many patients, for example, that were past due that didn't come back for the past 6 months, and we want to get her on the phone dialing dollars, and we want her to report on what percentage of these patients she's secured into the schedule for treatment. So reactivation of those past due patients is a very clear measurement for this particular job description as well. The hygienist is a producer, the same as a dentist. So this is a fairly easy job description also to measure. And so we would want her to be looking at what her daily production was for the day versus what her goal was. Is she taking an active role, for example, if a patient does not show up by going to the assistant to find out whether or not one of the doctor's patients could be moved over, for example. So is she taking an active role in trying to help that situation? She doesn't certainly have complete control of it by any sense of the word. And we also want her to measure what percentage of her production was in interceptive periodontal therapy in the 4,000 codes, because industry standard would be 33%. We would also want her to measure and look at how many bite wing x-rays that she took compared to the amount of prophies that she did. So in other words, if your philosophy of the practice is that bite wing x-rays are taken once a year, then that would be around 50% of your prophies. You may have a philosophy that bite wing x-rays are taken at every appointment. So what you have to look at what your philosophy is, then determine what that percentage should be. Then we also want her to keep an eye and measure and report on what percentage of the patients that are on the active recall system, which are due to come in between today and 1 year from today, what percentage of the total patients that are due to come back are on 3-month recall, and what percentage are on 4-month recall, because they certainly should not all be on 6 months. This all relates back to 33% of production of perio. So if we see that the percentage of active recall patients is really low on 3- and 4-month recall, then we're gonna see that there's very little amounts of interceptive periodontal therapy that's actually being done in the practice. The key is I want you to admit when it just isn't working, because sometimes you hire someone who seems perfect for the role and it just doesn't work out. And I know you hate to do it, but if you provided a team member with the tools and the training needed to succeed, and that employee still isn't meeting your expectations, it might be time to part ways. Because you cannot build a successful dental practice on your own. You need to have a very strong team behind you. So I hope that you will follow these tips, and you'll soon find that your team members are happier and more efficient as they work together towards one common goal, which is helping your practice reach its true success and profitability. And before I leave you this evening, I want to point out some resource material. Sometimes I give you things and ideas, but it's like, okay, well, how do I do that? You know, short of hiring us, which is fine too. But if you go to my website at McKenzieMGMT.com, and you go to that particular URL, /practice.php. I have 3 books there that I've written. The first one is How to Hire the Best Dental Employee. And in this book, the chapters are like developing a job description, advertising, how to write the ad, how to review resumes. What does initial telephone screening look like? What does the interview process look like? I have an application in there. I have questions that you can ask and questions that are specifically designed for the job description, whether, questions if you're interviewing a hygienist, questions if you're interviewing a dental assistant. I've got testing in there. I've got math tests in there. I've got spelling tests in there. And how to check references. So because my first business that I ever had was a licensed employment agency for dental personnel, and that was years and years ago. And so I've had a lot of experience in that area. And so I wrote this book because I could see that the hiring protocol was so sorely lacking in the practices that we went in. The second one is Reward Your Dental Team. I have been pretty outspoken over the years about that I do not believe, I have not seen that financial bonus plans work in a practice. I've seen all different kinds of formulas over the years. I have seen employees who just don't even know how it works or when they get it. But I do believe that an employee needs to be rewarded for performance that exceeds the job description measurement. And so I've written in this book, I've got a lot of checklists and I have questionnaires to help the dentist, to determine what rewards are going to be best suited for each team member. See, dentists just naturally think it's money, but it's not always money. There's other things besides financial rewards. And then you have to look at, well, should I do a group reward or should I do individual reward? So I help you to kind of figure that out too. But I've tried to give you some different ways on how you can reward employees and reward the team other than dangling a dollar bill. I had a dentist once who said, "Oh, I'm going to start giving my scheduling coordinator a bonus." I said, "What are you going to do that for?" He said, "Well, because," he said, "I figure that if I do that, she'll keep my schedule full." And I said, Are you telling me that she really knows how to do it, but she hasn't been doing it, and she's going to start doing it, though, when you give her an extra dollar? I mean, seriously. I mean, wouldn't that make you mad if she really knew how to do it, but then she never did it? The next book is Performance Measurements for the Dental Team, and that book is what I was talking about tonight. I have Excel. You have access to Excel, ready to use graphs in there to measure the different job descriptions and how to measure them, and giving you an idea on what goals and objectives should be in there as well. So I just invite you to go to my website. You can certainly explore more information about the books. And then, of course, I would be remiss if I didn't say that my company does provide professional training. We have 2-day training programs for front office, a dentist CEO training, office manager, treatment acceptance, leadership, and hygiene. So I can provide this professional training to your employees. And we certainly invite you to call us at 877-777-6151, and we'll be happy to send you the curriculum. You can view the curriculum on my website as well. This is my website, MackenzieMGMT.com. And there you can find out more information about our training programs, our consulting programs, and other management products that I have. You can email me personally at info@MackenzieMGMT.com, and that email comes directly to me. So if you have any type of question, don't hesitate to ask me. I always on email, and I really welcome. I love to help people, and I'd be happy to try to help you best I can. I'm always good for an opinion, that's for sure. Excuse me, I just got a tickle in my throat here at the end. Anyway, have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you very much for joining me this evening, and I look forward to hoping you'll come back, and we'll have another webinar in December. Okay? Thanks.